Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Madison. My name is Charles McClymans, and I'm the club president, and it's so great to have you all here today. Today's meeting is being sponsored by Julie Swenson and the Forward Theater Company. Julie, yes, thank you, Julie. Julie's been a member of our club since 2018 and co-chairs our Rotary Scholar Mentoring Committee. She's the managing director of the Forward Theater Company, which is a resident professional theater company at Overture Center for the Arts. Founded in 2009, Forward provides Madison area audiences with exceptional theater productions and local professional artists with an artistic home base. They are inspired by the Wisconsin idea of service to the broader community, and they tie their onstage work to expansive encouragement efforts throughout each season. Our thanks to Julie and Forward for their sponsorship. Please remain standing, and Bob Dindorf will lead us in singing God Bless America a cappella.
Well, spring break means apparently all of our piano players have spring break. And in addition, we'll get ready for next week's home opener for the Brewers, seventh inning stretch. So here we go. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Makes me want to go back into choral conducting. Good job.
Thank you. Nice job. Bob, since it is spring break, I thought it was originally Acapulco style, but it's a cappella. Yeah, no, great job, everyone. Okay, today's guest will be introduced by Jeff Tews.
Thank you. Guests, as is our tradition, we will ask you to stand when I call your name and remain standing so we can recognize you. Today we have Paul Dearlove as a guest of James Ty, Brett Heigemeyer, guest of Becky Steinhoff, Noah Hill, Clark Johnson, Tom Kaminsky, guesses of Andrea Kaminsky, John Johnson, guest of Carol Trone, Cyril Milestone, guest of Julie Swenson, Tori Nelson, guest of Dean Nelson, Brad Paul, a guest of Peter Gray, Nancy Potter, a guest of Bobby Sladke, Jennifer Sullivan, a guest of John Hayes, Peter Ziskowski, guest of Dewey Bredson, Linda Vacuna, Vacunta. Thank you, Vacunta. Guest of Paul Ryman, Jenny Yuska, guest of Ken Yuska, and Trisha Wate, guest of Sagar Hawate. So please recognize our guests.
Thanks, Jeff, and welcome to all of our guests. Robert Reed is going to provide today's Rotary Moment of Gratitude. Come on up here, Robert. Robert's been a member of our Rotary, has been a member of Rotary since 2016. He started with the Plano, Texas Rotary Club and joined our club when he came here to Madison in 2022 to become the new executive director of the Madison Symphony Orchestra. Robert will provide today's Moment of Gratitude.
Hey, Robert.
Thank you.
I haven't even said anything yet, but that's great. Well, I'm going to first correct Charles just a little bit. I joined Rotary actually in 2011, when I was in Rotary in Corpus Christi, Texas, was my first Rotary club. And so the question comes, why did I join Rotary? The reason is I was told you need to join Rotary. So that's why I joined Rotary. I was running a symphony in a small city in Texas, and I was told that, this would be a great way of getting to learn the community. So I did, and I thought I knew the community well because, running one of the largest sports organizations of that community, and I thought I knew the community. But when I joined Rotary, the whole community in the world opened up for me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful, because I have learned about the community. I've learned connections. I have learned the networking. I have learned all of these things that has made me a stronger leader, arts leader. It has made me a stronger citizen and as a stronger person. So I'm grateful for Rotary for all that it has brought to me and my knowledge. When I came to Madison, it has made so many connections for me because of being in Rotary. There are people in particular, the one I'm sitting next to, I call her my Madison mother over here. But, I love, Margaret Murphy, because when I first got this job in Madison before I moved here, Margaret came up to me and she said, "Robert, where are you going to live?" It was at a reception when I was just being announced to the community. And I said, "Well, I don't know yet. I haven't moved here." And Margaret said, "You're going to live with us." And it's a funny story as a black man. I go, "What is this strange white woman telling me that I'm going to be living with her?" But I did, and we have become the best of friends. And Margaret and her late husband, Howard, we were the best of friends, and we've had so much fun together. But, I've got to know so many other things. The programs that Rotary offers each and every week, I find them actually quite fascinating. So again, when I first joined Rotary before 2011, I really was only focused on the arts world and those nonprofits. That really only mattered to me. But I've learned so much being involved in how a city runs and how everything works together. And being in a place like Madison, when you have the university, which is a huge engine for this community, it's been great. I've got to work with wonderful people like Linda Vacunta over there. She has served as narrator for us. And so many of you have gone to the symphony and, go to other arts organizations, and not just arts, but social services and others. So I'm just grateful for Rotary for all that it's done to make me a better person. I believe in Rotary's motto. I believe, serve self. I'm just going to pass right past that one there before I put my foot in my mouth even more. But I believe in everything that Rotary stands for. And so I'm grateful to be a Rotarian. I thank you all for welcoming me into Rotary here in Madison. This is an amazing group, and we are really lucky to have this in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I forgot to add that Robert also chairs our music committee and is doing a great job, even though he couldn't arrange an instrumentalist today. But this is a conscious decision. Oh, okay. Thank you. We appreciate you, Robert. We had some grant approvals recently in the second round of our innovation grants. Our club board of directors on March 13th approved these. The foundation trustees approved them at a joint meeting also. And Peter Kavi is going to come up and tell us about the grantees.
Good, Charles. How are you? Thanks, President Charles. Our Rotary Club in Madison historically used the funds from our fund drive to provide grants to about 45 organizations, and we've been doing that for a long time. The grants were typically anywhere between $2,000 and $9,000 each. This year we tried something different. We kind of transitioned to a new process and a kind of a new funding model focusing on three key areas. And I'd like to run you through those very quickly, if I may. We expanded funding to our ethics symposium from $17,500 to $27,500. That was our first initiative. The second is a new excellence in education grant. That was implemented this year, totaling $145,485. And it it's meant to align with our club's priorities around youth academic success. We heard reports from representatives from the 4 recipient organizations at our luncheons last fall, you might remember. Thirdly, there's a new innovation grants program designed to provide smaller, faster to fund amounts to organizations that want to launch, test, evaluate, improve, or expand a project that they're currently involved in. We had 2 grant funding cycles for the innovation grants. 8 grants totaling $40,000 were announced last fall. Our committee reviewed the second round of innovation grants last month, and 7 grants totaling $31,990 have been approved. There are handouts on your table that look something like that. So if you want to see who we funded, you're going to hear about the flip side in a minute, but I'm talking about the ones with the little circles on the front there. So if you want to check those out, you can learn a little more about the grants that were recently approved. These grants were made possible by your contributions to our annual fund drive. It's because of you that Rotary can make these very impactful and very meaningful gifts to our community. Our committees continually evaluate our processes, and we'll be making improvements for the next funding cycle that starts on July 1st. If anyone is interested in being part of one of these highly rewarding committees, you can use the committee sign-up sheet that you recently received from the Rotary office, or email the Rotary office and let the staff know of your interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and I will just add that all of these fine organizations that you see are looking for volunteers. We designed this whole new grant process for involvement with Rotarians, and so all of the organizations, whether it's the Excellence in Education grants or the Innovation grants, they want Rotarians to volunteer. So please keep that in mind as well. It's another way for our club to get involved. And I do believe, maybe Mary Donahue could tell me, or Charles Tubbs, I think we are at about 85% on the grants campaign, right? 85% of membership gave to the grants campaign. Even though the campaign is closed, guess what? It's still actually open until June 30th, the Rotary year. So if for some reason you forgot, you can still make that gift. All right. Next, I'm going to call Tammy Thayer up, and she's going to talk about some of the international projects that we're doing.
Thank you, President Charles. Good afternoon. I guess I didn't need to bring my napkin.
Just in case you slobber.
So this year I'm the chair of the International Projects and Program Committee, and it's an honor to serve in this role. We have an incredible group of members of this committee who are very active. And this year, in fact, we've been extremely active. On your table, on the flip side of what Peter just presented, is the list of the grants that were approved by our club board and the foundation board, and we really appreciate both boards' support for our projects. We divide them into district grants and global grants because there's a different process for approval for these grants, and both global and district grants are eligible for match gifts from our districts. So if they're just district grants, say a $5,000 grant is potentially worth, it can be doubled, and it could be $10,000, so we can do a lot of good around the world when we add the district match. If it's a global grant, we can get, say, a $25,000 global grant, we can get a $25,000 match potentially from the district, and then 80% of that, of what the district gives, is matched by RI. So incredible impact. So the list that you'll see, the first one was approved not in this latest round, but earlier this year, and that is $2,000 for funding for a rehabilitation project in Poland. And that was initiated by a club member who actually gave a check for that project, and it's being led by the Fort Atkinson Club. But our club approved that, and we actually funded $2,000 for that. The next one is a newer project, and we will be submitting a request for district match soon, the Liberia project, which is funding for a solar-powered water supply system in rural areas in Liberia. And that is being led by Dave Ettinger and John Braden. The next one on your list you'll see is in Nepal, and that's for up to $5,000. The Liberia one is up to $8,000. I didn't mention that. The Nepal project is up to $5,000. That's being led by Karen Kendrick Hands, and that's funding for equipment, solar-powered panels and other equipment in a home in Nepal for women who have been trafficked. And the founder of that home was trafficked. So we're excited about that and all of these. Then there's another global grant that we will contribute up to $5,000, and that's being led by Peter Lewandowski. It's the largest affordable housing project in Canada. So it's a 70-unit habitat project development for low-income people. And again, we will fund up to $5,000. That's a global grant, and it's being led by a club in Ontario. Next, we have $2,500 that's been approved for a well in Vietnam, in a mountainous area in Vietnam. We do have a partnership with a Rotary Club in Da Nang, which I'll talk about in one moment, related to our signature project. But this project is interesting too because it's coordinated with Madison Quakers, and I think many people in this room know Joe Elder from the sociology department. Joe was foundational in support in organizing and launching this initiative that's received a lot of global press. They've installed a lot of wells in rural areas in Vietnam. So our club will be installing one, and if we get a district match, we'll install two. Then there's another project in Guatemala. It's the second grant that we've provided for a well in Guatemala that's being led by the Milwaukee Club. And we just got approval for that, and the district has matched $2,500. So there will be two wells in Guatemala that we supported. And then the last project before the signature project is a newer project that's being launched in Budapest, which is a school for children from Ukraine. And we will support up to $5,000 for this grant to help buy equipment for this and materials for kids in this school. So we're also very excited about this one. And our signature project is working very closely with the Rotary Club in Vietnam in Da Nang. The Rotary Clubs in Vietnam are very new, but basically through this project, 240 students, at-risk students, and their families will be identified from 12 schools in 3 provinces, and will provide a program over a 12-month period to enable them and their families to identify trafficking threats and to develop their workforce skills to persevere into their adult lives. We'll be working with community partners and major employer representatives and providing opportunities for the Rotary Club of Madison and others to travel to Vietnam and or to get engaged, being, for example, a mentor to some of these kids in Vietnam and working with them virtually, helping them to practice their English skills. Because they know that one of the ways that these kids can avoid being trafficked is to be educated. And the English language is highly valued in Vietnam. So you'll have opportunities, and you'll learn more about this down the road. So at an investment cost of approximately $375 per student for this 12-month period, we'll play an important role in helping to prevent trafficking for these at-risk youth. So those are all of our projects. As you can see, we've been busy, but it's a great committee, so come and join us.
Thank you, Tammy, and we thank the committee for their good work. As you can see, they have been busy, and our Rotary International annual Rotary International Foundation annual campaign will be kicking off next month, so you have an opportunity to support our international projects as well. Okay, on to birthdays. We have birthdays to celebrate with a bit of humor and wisdom that complement Rotary's mission, and we invite our celebrants to make a gift to our Synergy Scholarship Fund. March 24th, Tanya Letman-Shu. March 24th, past President Regina Milner says, "To all my March celebrant colleagues, regardless of our ages, it beats the alternative." Thank you, Regina. March 24th, Robin Ryan. March 25th, Jim Christensen. The 25th, Aaron McCombs. 26th, Ken Loving. The 26th, Joy Rice. March 27th, past President Ellsworth Brown shares this. Albert Einstein reminds us that we should make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. Good one, Ellsworth. The 27th, Diane Everson. March 28th, Chris Campbell. The 28th, Sarah Eskrich. The 28th, Jason Salas, and the 30th, Bob Grabner, who says, "We never really grow up, we only learn how to act in public." Right, so please join me in wishing all of our celebrants a happy birthday, and now I will lead us a cappella style, in singing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Okay, we have a lot of members in the news. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. Rhonda Adams, Doing Something Good cookbook, benefits area food pantries. Brian Chan was in business about the SuperNet's partnership with Nordic Consulting. Deborah Cronmiller interviewed on WMTV Channel 15. Aurelia Estrada talking about affordable dental cares. Sparkles and Smiles Gala. Jason Ilstrup will be serving as MC. Laura Gallagher's creative company won a Platinum Marcom Award in the 2023 International Creative Competition. Kirsten Houghton was recently elected to the United Way Foundation Board. Linda Ketchum was pictured and quoted in an article about their upcoming gala with Father Greg Boyle on April 11th. Sabrina Madison was quoted in Isthmus about property taxes. Oscar Morales was being honored for 30 years of service on April 1st. 30 years of service at Omega School. Congratulations to Oscar. Sandy Morales was quoted in the State Journal article about big brothers, big sisters seeking more mentors of color. And Carla Tennis was quoted in a Cap Times cover story on Madison's housing crisis. All right. On to our program. Jim, I promised you I'd keep us on time. I didn't want to eclipse your time. All right. Today's speaker is Jim Lattis, who holds a PhD in History of Science from the UW-Madison and is the author of many publications in that field. He is the director of the UW Space Place, which is the Astronomy Department's public education center. He manages the historic Washburn Observatory, teaches courses in introductory astronomy and its history, gives frequent public talks, and consults widely for the media. He has also held many trips focused on astronomical tourism. He will talk with us today about the last total solar eclipse across the United States for the next 20 years or so. Jim, we look forward to your presentation, and to thank you for being with us today, we have made a gift in your honor to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund. We will have question and answer, time permitting, so let's welcome Jim Lattis to our podium.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me today to get ready for this eclipse, and I'm hoping that reminder on my screen there goes away fairly soon. Maybe when I advance the slides it will. That's a plug for my forthcoming book, which maybe we'll talk about afterwards if we have time. But what we're here to do is talk about the eclipse, the solar eclipse that's coming up very soon now on Monday, April 8th. It will be subject, of course, to springtime weather, but if you're in the right place at the right time, you can see a total solar eclipse. not in Madison. Not going to see a total solar eclipse in Madison. I'll show you where you can see it, weather cooperating. The total solar eclipse is quite a sight. I'm wondering how many of you saw the total solar eclipse of 2017 a few years ago? Whoa, quite a few more than I would have expected. How many have seen any other total solar eclipse besides the one in 2017? Oh, still, okay, that's the highest fraction of any group I've asked those questions of. That's pretty good. If you've seen one, you can probably understand why there are so many repeats. It's a unique experience on this planet, and once you've seen one, I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but as I described it, it's a multi-sensory sort of thing. It's not just the thing that you see in the sky, but it's something that you feel in the environment around you, that you hear in the environment around you. The wildlife around you responds to it. The weather changes as the moon shadow passes by, and you do get to see the corona of the sun, and that's the only time you can see it, is during a total solar eclipse. So it's a remarkable thing, and it's most people think that it's worth the trip once they've made it. Before and after the total eclipse, you see a partial eclipse. So there's you see there in the top the top slide the stages of a partial eclipse leading up to the moment when the centers of the sun and the moon and the location of the observer are all in a straight line, and at that moment the disk of the moon can cover the sun, and that yellow disk of the sun there is completely gone because the moon is big enough to cover that, and you see the corona emerge. If that alignment isn't just right, then all you see is the partial eclipse. Then right there at the middle where you see totality in that sequence of images there, instead the centers never quite coincide, and there's always a little crescent of sunlight visible. And that's a partial eclipse. And so we will see a partial eclipse here in Madison. That means that some amount of the surface of the sun, of that yellow part that you see in this image here, some amount of that is always visible, and it's never safe to look directly at the sun. So, arranged by Joy Cardine, you have on the table there solar eclipse glasses. Now, in 2017, there was a big panic just as the eclipse of 2017, as that approached, because not enough of us had gotten supplied with enough eclipse glasses. Now, it turns out there are plenty of alternatives, which I'll talk about, but I think this time my impression is that these things are all over the place. So I hope even if we don't have enough here for everybody here to go away with one, I hope you'll be able to find alternatives. We also have more at the Astronomy Department. If you want to know when you can get those from us, I can tell you about that as well. But the point is, if you're not at the total eclipse, then there's no part of the eclipse that you can watch without eye protection or some kind of a projection technique, which we'll talk about. How many are planning to go somewhere to try and see this one? Okay, about the same number, but sort of a different set of hands. Interesting. Okay. So why do these happen? Well, they happen because it's possible for the shadow of the moon to cross the surface of the Earth, and because the moon is large enough to completely cover the disk of the sun. There are times when that doesn't happen, and we get a slightly different kind of eclipse, which I'll show you in just a moment. But here you see a rough diagram. I guess I can point over at this screen, and then I'll point over at that screen. But you can see this is not to scale. This is just to give you the general idea of things. The deep shadow of the moon, where the sun is completely covered, is that little red spot in there that laser completely wipes out right down there. The dense, the completely covered, the portion of the shadow in which the sun's disk is completely covered by the moon is called the umbra, as it says down there. Umbra. Does that say umbra? I can't really see that. Yeah. That screen is so foreshortened for me here. And then But if you move just away from that center line, so that instead of being at totality, you're out of line a little bit and a little bit of the sun is visible, you're in what's called the penumbra, where it's a partial shadow. Some of the sun's disk is blocked by the disk of the moon, and some of the sun's disk is still visible. Then you're in the penumbra, and the penumbra shades off, and if you're outside of the penumbra, then you don't see any eclipse at all. The alignment is not close enough for the moon to block any of the sun. In the lower right corner, you can see an actual picture from space of the umbra and the penumbra. This was taken from a space station, actually not the International Space Station, if where I grabbed this from the internet is right. But the point is that there you see the dense shadow in the middle and shading out into the penumbra surrounding there. As the moon is moving in its orbit, the moon is orbiting, that's the moon's orbit there, the moon's going around like that. As the moon is moving in its orbit, that shadow there is racing across the surface of the Earth in excess of about 1,000 miles an hour or so, depending on the circumstances. So it races across North America. When it crosses North America in a matter of minutes, 20, 30 minutes, something along that line, crossing vast areas of space. And then if you're in the right place at the right time, then you see this totality for just a short time. Oops, that went backwards, sorry. All right. So again, same picture as before. At the top, if the alignment is right, we get the total solar eclipse. There are times when the reason that the moon is big enough to cover the sun is about 400 times larger than the moon, but it's also about 400 times farther away. So they both have the same angular size in the sky, about a half a degree. So that's close enough that at times the moon can cover the sun. But the moon's orbit is not a perfect circle, so there are times when the moon is closer to the Earth and sometimes further away. You've probably all heard of supermoons. That's when a full moon is a little bit closer or close enough to the perigee, to its lowest point in its orbit, that people talk about it being slightly bigger in the sky, and it is slightly bigger in the sky. When the new moon is close enough to the Earth, close enough to perihelion, and all the alignment is right, then we get a total solar eclipse. But the other side, the flip side of that, is that the moon can be near apogee, near its farthest place from the Earth, and then its angular diameter is a little bit too small to cover the disk of the sun. And then we're left with a ring of sunlight around the disk of the moon, and once again, you don't have a total solar eclipse, and you have to wear eye protection to see one of those. We had one of those cross the continental U.S. just last fall, in October. There was an annular eclipse that crossed, and not in Wisconsin. We were too far off the center line, as we were in 2017, as we are now. So we get instead the partial eclipse, partial phases all the way along. Now we're going to have a little bit deeper partial eclipse than you see here, because we're closer to the center line of this eclipse than for those previous two. So this is an image, and I commend to you this website, which is up here at the top. Just the important part is just eclipsewise.com. So that's pretty easy to remember right up there at the top, eclipsewise.com. If you go to that website there, you will find there a summary of eclipses, hundreds of eclipses, both solar and lunar, for centuries into the past and into the future. You can pick out whatever date it is that you want to see, the geographical details of whatever eclipse it is that you're interested in. So obviously I've picked the one that's upcoming here. And those double blue lines crossing across North America there are the path of totality. If you're between those two blue lines, then you get a total solar eclipse. If you're outside of the blue lines, then you get a partial eclipse, although if you're far enough outside the blue lines, if you're up here, there's no eclipse at all. So these are the edges of the penumbra here, edges of the penumbra there and up there, and then these are the edges, the blue lines are the edges of the umbra, within which is the path of totality. So you see, if you're looking up there, Wisconsin is right about there. We're not that far away in global geographical terms. Here, it's hard for me to see this up here, but is that Wisconsin there about? Yeah, so we're about that far off from the eclipse path. We're going to have a pretty deep partial eclipse. Now, the difference between a partial eclipse and a total eclipse, between a 99% and 100% eclipse is a huge difference. And I've talked to many people who decided they would maybe reluctantly go along with the family. Okay, we're going to drive into the eclipse path, and they come away saying, wow, I thought being at 99% would be okay, but it's all the difference in the world, because still a little bit of the sun's surface is shining out there, illuminating the atmosphere, illuminating the earth, and the full effect of the umbra doesn't reach you if there's even the littlest bit of sunlight there. So this is the path. You can see down there over Mexico, there's a little green sun-like thing with sort of rays about it. That's the maximum eclipse. So although I find myself all the time talking about eclipses over the continental U.S., it also feels very parochial, because this eclipse is a Mexican eclipse as much as it is a U.S. eclipse or a Canadian. It goes over Newfoundland up there. So it's just these boundaries that we draw that make it an American eclipse of any sort. So the maximum eclipse is there in Mexico. It's coming from the left and going towards the upper right. So it crosses Mexico and then Texas, and then comes up, that is, I'm talking about the path of totality, and then up through the Midwest, crosses Indianapolis and Cleveland and up to Buffalo, and then out into the Atlantic. So there's a lot of the population of the U.S. has the opportunity to just walk out their front door that afternoon and look up and see a total solar eclipse, weather cooperating, of course. That's actually kind of rare. That's the rare thing. We sometimes hear about these eclipses as if they're rare. I had to correct a TV reporter. It's not a once-in-a-lifetime event. Sorry. It was just one 7 years ago. But the eclipses feel rare, because if you do just wait for the day when you can walk out your front door and look up, you'll wait about 400 years on the average. You do have to travel typically to see the total solar eclipse, although some people get luckier than others. So let's talk about some specifics. What will it be like here in Madison? Well, in Madison, as I've said over and over again, we do not get a total solar eclipse. In Madison, it's going to be about 89% of total. So I did a little cartoon there in the upper right to show you roughly, give you a rough idea how much of the sun is still visible at 89%. So that's a pretty clear crescent. It's a nice thin crescent, and a lot of the sunlight is now being blocked by the moon, but there's still plenty of direct sunlight coming from the surface of the sun. You have to wear your eclipse glasses or do something else to protect your eye. But look at the Madison. I won't use the pointer because I go back and forth there, but just look at the row for Madison. That gives us the times, the relevant times of the eclipse in Madison. A little bit before 1 o'clock, 12:50. A little bit before 1 o'clock is the very beginning, when the first little bit of the sun starts to disappear behind the moon. But then it doesn't happen real fast. It's not until a little bit after 2 that 2:06, that we have the maximum. That's this 89% drawing that I made. And then it's over by about 3:20. So a little bit before 1, and then shortly after 2 is sort of the maximum. That's when, if you want to make time in your day to go outside and take a look, that's probably the time to shoot for, is around maximum. And then the magnitude there is a little bit less than 80. I rounded to 89, 88.6% there. Now, just for comparison, I put the times up. Just look at the maximum times for a couple of nearby cities. You'll see it doesn't make a great deal of difference if you're in Milwaukee or Minneapolis or Chicago. It makes a few minutes difference one way or the other. So you don't necessarily need to follow up on any of the websites that I'm going to show you, like eclipsewise.com, to look up specific times. If you're in Madison, just remember a little after 2 p.m. And then I did want to put on one city on the chart there that is in the path of totality. And so I chose Buffalo, New York, because my son's girlfriend is from Buffalo, and we thought we were going to go there, but they broke up, and so not going to Buffalo, Indianapolis instead. But those are the times for Buffalo. Look at the maximum time there. It's an hour later because it's the Eastern time zone, so that's why it says 3:20. But it's 15 minutes or so later over there in Buffalo than it is here, allowing for the time zone difference there. And there it's total. Notice the magnitude column, it's 105%, and the totality will last about 3 minutes and 45 seconds over there. So different numbers depending on where you go. If you are going to visit someplace to see the solar eclipse, then you want to think about what's a good place, like where maybe you have a headquarters that you can identify. I hope you can see it up there in the upper right corner. This is a really good tool for preparing for a trip like that, or even just shopping around if you want to. Up at the top it says eclipse2024.org. Can you see that up there? Way up there in the upper right corner. That's another nice short website to remember or jot down or whatever. Eclipse2024.org supplies an interactive map. So there you see the path of totality. This time it's red lines showing you the edges of the umbra as it sweeps from lower left, we're kind of lower there up to upper right. And with this map, if you, at eclipsewise.org, you can then click on it's an interactive map, you can click anywhere you want, and it'll come up with the equivalent of those numbers that I was just showing you for Madison and Milwaukee and so on. So I clicked on Madison, having no imagination. I should have clicked on somewhere up here in the middle of Wisconsin or something. Maybe you've got a fishing cabin up here or something, and you're going to be there, and you want to know what time what are the times at that place. Well, you just click at that spot. And so in this diagram, the box that popped up there says click here, I think it says for eclipse details, that line. Is that the one? I can't read either one of those. One of those, I think it's that one. One of those lines there says click here for details. You click on there and a box pops up and shows you the time and other specifics of the eclipse at that specific location. So that's really great for shopping around for a place to view the eclipse, especially if you're going to the somewhere along the path of totality there. All right. How do you observe it? If you're talking about the whole eclipse, whether you're going to the path of totality or not, you're going to need some way to view the partial phases of the eclipse. The total phase of the eclipse is perfectly safe to look at with the naked eye. So once the last little bit of the sun's disk has disappeared, you can take off the eclipse glasses. You won't see anything with the eclipse glasses on anyway, and look up into the sky, and you see the eclipsed sun. You see this wonderful sight of the corona. It's a dark sky at that point. You'll see stars and planets. There's a little bit of excitement because there's a comet up there right now that some of us are going to try to catch. That might not work out because comets are hard to predict. But at any rate, that's in totality. If you are in someplace where, well, if you're outside the path of totality, then you need eye protection the whole time. So that's why you've got the eclipse glasses. By the way, let me just add that all of the talk about danger around the time of eclipses has nothing really to do with the eclipse. It's all about solar. The solar is the dangerous part in the phrase solar eclipse. Anytime looking at the sun is dangerous. It's just that we don't usually think about it except when it's around the time of a solar eclipse and people start talking a lot about it. And lunar eclipses for the same reason. No solar in that phrase. Lunar eclipses are never dangerous to look at. Well, so the proper way to do this these days is these almost ubiquitous solar eclipse, mass-produced solar eclipse filters, of which there are many varieties, kinds that you can put over your binoculars and telescope if you really want to get into that. There are these replace a number of kind of home remedies that we might or home recipes, maybe I should call them. You used to read in astronomy books that you should take a piece of glass and hold it over your kerosene lamp until there's a nice coating of lamp black on there, and then you look at the sun with that. Don't do that. That's an incomplete filter. It will make it more comfortable to look at the sun, but it still passes a lot of infrared that you won't feel as it's working on your retina. There's other things. Don't stack up sunglasses. Don't look through exposed photographic film. None of those things are safe. Find a pair of eclipse glasses if you want to look directly at the sun. But it's important to recognize that you don't have to even look directly at the sun to appreciate everything about the eclipse except the totality, which most of you are not going to be looking at anyway. And I might be under a cloudy sky myself at that time. Because we can take a hint from nature On the sidewalk there, next to the manhole cover, you see little spots of sunlight dappling the sidewalk or the street or whatever that is. And those are images of the sun that arise from the interstices, the little clearances, the places where the sunlight falls through the leaves of a tree. We won't have much foliage up here, so we won't see that kind of effect very strongly. But the point is that a small aperture, like what the sunlight finds through the leaves of a tree, can produce an image, and you can do the same thing with two pieces of paper just by poking a pinhole in one of them and allowing the sunlight to pass through. You actually have your back to the sun when you're doing this, so there's no danger of looking at the sun. You hold the pinhole in front of the other piece of paper and it will make an image for you and show you the stages of the eclipse. These are great things for kids because you can give them a stack of 3x5 cards and tell them to try different sized holes and different sized spacing and that sort of thing. You can even get really fancy with it. You can save up cereal boxes or refrigerator boxes or whatever you've got and make solar eclipse theaters, as you see in the lower right there. And you can even make some fairly high-tech pinholes that will make much nicer images with aluminum foil. So once again, lots of room for experimentation and that sort of thing. So you don't even need the eclipse glasses. There's absolutely no need, if you can't find the eclipse glasses, to hide indoors. You can still you make a pinhole viewer and you can go out and view the eclipse. And people have been doing the pinhole viewing stuff for, I don't know, a very long time, long before there were any sorts of filters to look at the sun. There was pinhole viewers. It's basically like a camera obscura. Maybe many of you know that, a literal pinhole camera where you have film and a pinhole. It's doing the same thing, creating an image on the projection screen there. Well, of course, you'd want to know more about this. I recommended a few websites which are also up there. The one that I particularly want to point out is the NASA website, which is this one, science.nasa.gov/eclipses. Is that the NASA one there? Yeah. So that is a good website. If you have no option, like maybe it's cloudy wherever you are, go there. They'll be live streaming it from a number of different locations around the country, and you can watch the whole thing happen. It's not quite the same. You're watching it on TV, but still, it's an option. And they also have lots of ideas about educational projects and lots of information about the eclipse and that sort of thing. Pretty much all related specifically to this eclipse. And so if you're interested in other eclipses, past or future, that first one, eclipsewise.com, is also a very good one. So I mentioned these are not once-in-a-lifetime sorts of experiences, unless you insist on just walking out your back door to see one. There's another one. The next good solar eclipse is coming up in August 2027. Now, that eclipse, I don't have the path up there. That eclipse, the path of the Umbra crosses northern Africa, the southern Mediterranean. I guarantee there'll be lots of cruise ships available out there. There's lots of cruise ships off the coast of Mexico for this one, down there ready to catch the eclipse. And that would be a good one. When's the next one in North America, and specifically in the continental U.S.? Well, that next one will be 2044. That turns out not to be a great-looking eclipse. If you look at the eclipse path, it picks up in North Dakota, cuts across Montana, and then heads for the North Pole. So it's not going to be a great one. But the year after that, 2045, take a look at this. That eclipse goes there, starts in, is that California? Maybe that's Oregon, or out there, can't quite see it. Crosses right across the middle of the U.S. and then down the Florida coast. That's going to be a nice one too. So, all right, so it's 20 years away, 21 years away. But we're gonna have some good options here, if you travel or stay around. So I will wrap up there so that we have time for Q&A. Thank you again for the invitation to come here today, and good luck with the weather. So we have time we do. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Mike Engelberger. Just a question on if you have any comments on what people thought historically, hundreds of years ago. Anything interesting that people would have said back in those days about an eclipse?
Well, so eclipses have been scientifically understood since the ancient Greeks. But you had to be educated to have access to that scientific understanding of eclipses. So certainly other than that, people have been, they worry people when they come along. Total eclipses were often thought to be really bad, especially astrologically. It's really, really bad if you're concerned about that. There are a number of stories. The most famous one is Christopher Columbus, who used a lunar eclipse to intimidate the natives in the Caribbean into bringing more food. They were getting tired of whatever he was trading, and he threatened to do something to the moon, and then he did, or actually he didn't. But that lunar eclipse, that he had an almanac for, so he knew it was coming. Yeah, certainly there are a lot of reactions to these sorts of things, mostly because they come unexpected. Once they start getting predictable, and they've actually been predictable for quite a long time, then the mystery starts to go away and becomes more or less a spectacle to be appreciated. Yeah. Other questions?
I'll hold it for you.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Lynn Roth, and I had a question. During the eclipse, are there any effects on GPS and communication networks? Any exacerbation of those problems?
I can't think of any effect on GPS. There's actually there are a number of what they now call citizen science projects going on that they link to the eclipses, mostly for educational purposes. I know that the ham radio community is going to be monitoring, using communications to see whether the path of totality, whether the umbra of the moon as it passes along, because it's affecting the Earth's ionosphere, which is involved in shortwave radio communications. They're going to be doing some investigations to see if they detect any eclipses. But no, I don't know of anything there's no reason that I can think of that it would affect GPS or cell phones or for that matter, radio. They're going to be checking though. Hello?
Okay. What's in...
Stand up, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joan Collins.
Who are you?
I'm Joan Collins. What's this made of that makes it better than just wearing dark glasses? And what if somebody does look at the sun without any protection? What happens?
Okay, well, I'm not an ophthalmologist, but I know it's bad if you look at the sun without any eye protection. But to answer your first question, so there's a lot in sunlight, besides the sheer intensity of the visible light, there's a lot in sunlight that's bad for your eyes. There's ultraviolet light and infrared, which you can't detect. And so if you had just dark glasses, even if they were dark enough, and you won't find any that are dark enough, but if they were dark enough to filter the light that much, they might not be. That's the problem with the lamp black thing that I mentioned. It's passing infrared light, and you can't tell that. Those filters there are designed to pass something like 1,000th of 1% of the total amount of light that comes in, and they're designed so that they are also not passing ultraviolet and infrared. So they're specifically designed for solar viewing. It's a plastic compound that's run off, I'm sure, in huge sheets. Welding glasses occasionally comes up. It's more or less the same effect as a welding glass, which is safe, although you have to have the right density, and there's a little bit of a debate among people about just what's dense enough in terms of welding glasses. So don't bother with that either.Use the Eclipse viewers.
You mentioned that wildlife reacts to an eclipse. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about how those reactions, what types of reactions those are? And then also the second part of my question is it safe to drink a Corona beer during the eclipse?
Only if you can finish it during totality, yeah. So yes, wildlife does. I'm far from an expert on that, but the total solar eclipses I have been to, you hear the birds change their tune, literally, because the night birds start to sing as this nighttime comes along in the middle of the day, and the robins and the sparrows go roost somewhere, and then they come back out again a few minutes later. So wildlife, that's the only example I have of wildlife responding, but that's well documented and easily notable too. Yeah. Do we have?
Paul Karch. I remember last time there was a lot of talk about a diamond flash you saw right when totality. Can you explain what that is?
Right, there's something called the diamond ring effect, which happens just when the last little bit of the sun's surface is about to be covered. And at that point, you begin to see the intense part of the corona around there, but there's still this extra bright part right on the limb. So it looks a little bit like a diamond ring that lasts only a second. If you blink, you will miss it, which is why there are plenty of photographs of it, but you have to try pretty hard to catch that because you have to catch just that moment just right. So that's the diamond ring effect. Yeah. Right. Is that it?
Well done. Thanks so much, Jim. Thank you so much, Jim, for speaking with us today. It's a fascinating topic. I hope everybody can see at least a bit of the eclipse. Join us next week. Well, I will not be here next week, but you can come back. President-elect Jason Ilstrup will be trying to begin his reign of humor here instead of me. But it's going to be a really interesting program. We'll have UW-Madison political science professor Ken Mayer on the topic of the unusual state of the presidential race. So, interesting topic. All right, before we leave, please stand and we will recite together the Rotary four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? We are adjourned. Have a great week, everyone.